I'm Rob Pasick, and I'm an executive coach, and I've worked with many of you, and I've worked with Thomas on trying to find your pathway, your sweet spot in career. How many of you feel you're in your sweet spot in your career? About half. How many feel you're not quite there yet? Just barely. How many are really looking forward to coming into work today? Come on, seriously, how many of you looking forward? I only got two hands to coming into work today. All right, that's passion. If you care, if you're looking forward, how many feel like you're using all your skills when you're at work, your talent? Yeah, this guy's on fire here. How many of you feel like you're in the right balance between work and family and home? You guys in the back, you're in trouble. I don't see any hands for any of these. And here's the final question. Doesn't really matter that much. How many of you feel like you're making enough money? I'm looking. Well, the sweet spot is if you find all four of those that go together. And this is an exercise I do. I think we did this, Thomas, didn't we, years back? Yeah. And if you want alignment of those four. Anyway, welcome to LeadersConnect, 25th year. We're celebrating. I want to promote that I have a new book. Do you want to hold that up for me, Megan? This is Megan, who's my director of administration and everything else for LeadersConnect. That book is called Men, A Guide to Healthy Aging, and everybody who's aging may use it. How many of you are aging, by the way? How many of you are older now than you were when you came in? Good, okay. Well, Thomas can explain to us how old the universe is as far as we're finding it. A couple other people I want to just give shout out to. Karen Tuttle. Karen, where are you? Stand up. So Karen is over here. She's director of marketing and design. So she designed the book and sent out the very nice announcement about it yesterday, and is going to manage, the two of them are going to manage my Amazon campaign. My goal is to sell 40,000 of these books. So I figure about 80 people in here, so how many of each do you have to buy to get to 40,000? And I would encourage you to, you could look at Amazon. If you're an Amazon member, you could get it for free. We're going to try to get back on for free. But I'm encouraging, the way I sell 40,000 is to get reviews. And they don't have to be positive, they could be anything. The Amazon counts. I'm hoping for positive, but I can't ask directly for that. Actually, I like feedback because it's when you publish with Amazon, you could change the book as you go. So if anybody sees something that is offensive, I don't want to get fired like the presidents in the Ivy League by saying the wrong thing, which is easy to do today. There's many other people. If you stand up, if you're looking for a job, if you're searching right now for an opportunity. Wow, everybody's employed. I guess nobody's part of that 3% that are unemployed, which is great, low number. So Thomas, I'm going to introduce you, but why don't you come on up with me. This is Thomas Zurbuchen. Let's give him a hand. He deserves a very big hand because his latest accomplishment, we'll stand in front of you. His latest accomplishment is spending time with his daughter yesterday here. So that's his big thing. And where is she? She's here, and what's she studying?
Neuroscience and linguistics, apparently.
Okay, and your son's studying?
Double base and computer science. So my kids are not good at decisions. Yeah.
Go ahead, you can tell them.
Yeah, we're good.
We're good about your kids.
Yeah, anyway, so I have two kids. The good news is I work in a university that it costs 700 Swiss francs, so it's just a little bit more than $700, but not much more per semester. And I'm paying my kids $145K per year together. So I'm like, my life choices should have been reconsidered, right? Anyway, it's worth every penny here at U of M, half of that roughly. Do you want me just to fire away, or?
Well, we'll talk about, we'll share just to introduce you. So I'm trying to get the titles down. I know when I worked with Tom 10 years ago on what his next step was going to be, he had started the Center for Entrepreneurship, correct? Is that was the right call? And how many of you have been part of that, either as an instructor or a member from, well, this guy's raising his hand for everything. You win the grand prize. What is your name?
What is it? Is it a book? A free book?
Free book. A free Kindle version of it. And I'll give you a discount on the bigger one. It's only $15, so yeah, it'll be $12.50 for you. So anyway, I knew Thomas. He's a professor of engineering and astrophysics. Engineer. Okay, what was this specialty? You had astro something.
I'm an astrophysicist by training, but I also I did space science, so I built a number of space instruments, including here in Ann Arbor.
So that's how I knew Thomas. He'd done that, and he's a real great leader, a leader that not just walks into a existing situation, but can lead from startup. But he is also a leader that walked into kind of how should we put it? An unorganized project to get a telescope into space. And this is his latest accomplishment, is leading the team that got James Webb telescope. And James Webb, I'm sure we'll hear something about it today, is changing our understanding of so many things, including how old we are. And the implications are enormous, and it's just starting. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Thomas, and he's going to talk for a while, and then he and I are going to have a discussion, and then we're going to break into small groups where you can think about questions that you want to ask him. This is the way, our format here at LeadersConnect. So let's give Thomas a hand again, and thank you for what you have done. It's great scientific breakthrough. Thomas, let go.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rob. And really appreciate being here. I'm in town for some events at U of M this week, so I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, I forgot to mention it. Let me have that back again. I forgot. Poor Thomas does not have a Michigan degree. So the powers that be decided that with his achievements and what he's done here, he's going to get an honorary doctorate at the end of this week. I mean, he's going to be up there with people like Jonas Salk and many, many famous authors. So congratulations. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm deeply honored, of course. I did not expect that. I was deeply honored by the president's team and the regions and everybody who had something to do with it. Just because Michigan has been my life, kind of, if you asked where in the U.S. am I home, it's right here in Ann Arbor. We spent over 20 years here. Our kids were born here. We went, built so many friendships here, friends that we still miss and we come back to and hang out with. So I'm just really excited to be here with you. So Rob asked me to talk about a topic, and he said, choose one. And I said it has to have something to do with leadership. And so, of course, I know about all the amazing work that Singermans have done, and so many of you, about vision, about kind of imagining the future, making that future happen. And what I wanted to do is kind of turn it around, kind of tell you some learnings I made with fear. And I want to kind of explain to you kind of how kind of handling fear, kind of I learned some of my most profound lessons that I used at NASA all the time and I use to today. And so basically that's what I want to do. And of course, if you have to chop the head of science at NASA, the first thing you remember every time you stand in front of a rocket, statistically 5% of the time that rocket does not make it to orbit. So like you hope today is not the day, especially if the payload on top of the rocket is really big, financially or otherwise. Five times out of 100, you're not making it to orbit. If you land on Mars, kind of the record that we have with 39 missions that have tried to get into orbit or land on Mars, depending on how you count, 18 to 20 have made it. So out of 39, 18 to 20. You say, why is there uncertainty? One of the reasons is that the Soviet Union tried to land on Mars. They never got in touch after they landed, but they said we successfully landed. So there's one of those, like, so I mean, that's what they communicated. So I'm saying 18 to 20, so that it's that kind of thing. But so kind of the point is like 1.5. So you kind of like that makes your heart pop, especially if you think of the cost of some of these vehicles. Between $1 billion to $2.5 billion were the ones that I landed when I was there. And then, of course, the James Webb Space Telescope. By the way, when you land on Mars, kind of one way to think about it is there's what we call a single point failure. So it's a technical thing that needs to happen for it to work. Every single point failure leads to mission failure if it's not working the right way. So landing on Mars is 90, roughly. 90 single point failures. The James Webb Space Telescope is 344. So single point failures, kind of things that need to work, really well for it to work. So you stand there, and you're in charge of these missions, and any human, including me, when you look at it, you get fearful, you get scared, and frankly, fear, like so many other feelings, are not bad. It's very rational to be scared. It's very rational to be worried about both threat and ambiguity. Both of them feel roughly the same way to us. It's like whether a lion roars at you or you're in the darkness looking at the dark trees and you hope there's not an animal breaking out from behind. They feel the same, even though to our stomach, to our pulse, they feel the same, but they're really different. And so what I wanted to do is kind of tell you, kind of over time, you know, how I learned, kind of actively learned how to handle these. Because when I went to NASA at the beginning, I barely could sleep. Because what happened is every morning I looked at my email and some kind of 2 or 3 horrible things were happening. You know, like, for example, a piece of debris was flying towards one of our spacecraft, and with a likelihood of 10% it would hit it. And so what do you do? Oh, this is going to be really bad, you know, and so how do I handle that? So I wanted to talk about just 5 lessons I learned and perhaps tell you a story with it, and I hope some of them may mean something to you. I'm sure many of you have learned your own lessons, so I'd like to learn about them in the discussion as we go forward. Does that make sense? So the first one is, the first lesson is a really simple one. It's that if we can direct the power, the emotional kind of energy that comes from fear into today, we're better off than if we keep it in the future. Today is where we live. Today is where all the decisions that we take have the most impact. The ones yesterday are past. The ones in the future, frankly, especially if they're in a far future, they're not here yet, and we don't really know how to handle. Today, in the now, is where we have most impact. So I'm going to use some of these stories. I want to use the James Webb Space Telescope just for you kind of to relate to that. So when I came to NASA in 2016, it took me roughly a month to notice that something was rotten in the telescope. Every meeting was green, green, green. Green technical, green schedule, green cost, which is what you want. But I realized that kind of off the critical path, we were not making progress, and nobody was talking about it. And basically what happened after I peeled away the onion, roughly, and it took me almost 10 months to know what really was going on, is that the spacecraft, the bus, not the telescope, where all the good news was about, which, by the way, was more complicated. But the spacecraft, the second most complicated thing, we had not made progress for 2 years. Because basically every 6 months, there was a mistake that happened that set us back 6 months. So it's the ultimate kind of dune race, right? You're on your throttle, the wheels are turning, and you're not going forward. And for me, what I had to do is, frankly, go at that problem with a sledgehammer, because it was such a proud, even arrogant organization that I basically had no chance in talking them into being better. What I did is I put an independent commission in place, and the independent commission said exactly what my feeling was. It's like, you're in trouble. And frankly, what I asked them is, do we have any chance of being successful with this telescope? And they said, you can be successful, but you need to do 36 things you're not doing, which was a gift from the heavens, because now I know which 36 things to focus on. The problem, though, and now I'm getting to live in the now, the problem was we were ridiculed in the national news as we were fixing these problems. I had to let go some important leaders and kind of get new ones in. And the problem was that everybody was scared now. So the problem was, at the beginning, they were so arrogant that they made mistakes every 6 months in a way that was very thoughtless. Now they're so scared that they're not moving forward. And frankly, I had to put my badge on the table 5 times when I was at NASA, where I said, you do this, I'm quitting. So I had to protect the telescope over that with a badge on the table. The administrator basically said, I'm going to cut the telescope. And I said, I have absolutely no problem if they fail, if we cut them, but we need to go through the experiment. They're scared, let me work with them. And so basically what we did is we basically made daily goals. So take that fear, which was a macroscopic feel, and put them into every day, every daily. And we started at the beginning, we only made half of them. And in 4 months, we were in a place where we went from half the goals to 95% of the goals. And people learned how to move together. Many of you know I'm a runner. The analogy always used is find your stride. If you run faster than you should, you're going to throw up at the corner up there, and you're not going to make it. If you're running too slow, it's just as bad. It takes too much energy. So find your stride and direct your worry to the now. So you move forward. And so that, by the way, they never got less than 95%, except when COVID happened a few weeks where we couldn't run the shifts because we had COVID cases, but they snapped back to that, and at the end they were at 120%, so they were actually faster than I ever wanted to be. Same team. So for me, direct the fear, direct the anxiety to today. Today is when you can do something about it, not tomorrow, today. So the second thing that I worried so much about is, like, we look at the future, and what I'm going to do is talk a lot about Stoics. So it turns out I started reading Stoics and podcasts and so forth, because they know how to, these fighters, they learn how to deal with fear. And so basically what Stoics basically said is, if you have fear, immediately start analyzing which are the things you can do something about, and which ones are the things that you cannot do something about, and let those be. Now, it's really easy to say that. But for me, what that meant, kind of with the James Webb Space Telescope, there are many things I literally could not do something about. Will the rocket work? I cannot do something about. Is the international work going to continue? Are the Europeans going to be successful? What I asked them is, like, how can I help? And literally what I did, what I could not do something about, I put on a sheet of paper, and I looked at them and say, I'm not worrying about these. But what I'm going to do is worry about all the other things. And for me, that kind of deliberately letting go the things that you cannot do something about kind of clears up brain space in a way that you actually need. Now, it turns out, if you let fear fester in your mind, it takes well more than its fraction that it should. And so for me, I don't know how you do this. For me, it's a notepad by the bed where I park thoughts that I need to let go before I go to bed. Because if you stop sleeping, you're really going from bad to worse in a heartbeat. So for me, need to sleep. So for me, parking bad things that you cannot do something about, is that. Profound insight by the Stoics, not mine. By the way, most of what I'm going to say are not my insights. It's just something that I started to learn to take on to my life and kind of move it kind of in practice and kind of be kind of in good shape while under deep stress from the outside. The third one is one that is very strange to us today, but is hard to do, and that is, and I believe in it very much so, and that is to visualize all the bad that can happen. So when the fear comes, now I'm like not at night, I'm not parking it, I'm actually thinking about all the bad things I'm worrying about, and I'm living through that. For me, for example, with the James Webb Space Telescope, it meant to know that even if that rocket goes in the water, my wife still loves me. My friends still love me. I'm not that rocket. For me, that rocket does not define me. And I actually thought about that on a regular basis in front of every launch, because of the statistics that I gave you. In front of every landing on Mars, I wrote 2 speeches every time. And with the James Webb Space Telescope and many others, I practiced them. We even did, on Mars landings, practice press conferences. And for me, they're really harrowing, because you think about all the amazing people that you meet when you walk out that press conference that you hope you never have to do, and you think all your work went down in shambles on Mars. For me, visualizing it makes it a human experience and takes the kind of aura of negative energy out of it in a way that all of a sudden you can handle it, because it's there and you know you can live on the other side. Because see, fear is way worse than failure. Way worse. You can make it through failure, whether it's your startup, whether it's your research project, whether it's, frankly, even your personal relationships. You can make it through failure. You have many friends who made it through. The fear of it can suffocate you. Visualizing it helps you bridge that. So for me, writing speeches or kind of scenarios, the day after failure, what am I doing, is the way I handled those things in a direct fashion. The fourth one, and I'm going to stop at 5, just so you know. The fourth one is accepting the outcomes. And so the things I learned at NASA, it's never as bad as you fear and never as good as you hope. Kind of life is somewhere in that statistical kind of bell curve, somewhere in the middle. That's where it's going to be. So I want to quickly tell you a story so you know what I mean with it. When you attach the telescope on top of a rocket, you do so by putting it down on an adapter, and then you put a clamp band on it. So it's a metal band with G-forces of many times the gravitational force, about 100 times. So what happened is when we put the James Webb Space Telescope on top of the rocket, we put it there, and we had already taken all the accelerometers off. You don't make mistakes anymore then, usually. So what happened is the top technician, put the clamp band on, and he put it in 4 windings of the screw, and then he went for lunch. And the screw ripped out, the clamp band snapped off in what sounded like a cannon shot, putting tens of G into the bus. Now the problem was we didn't know how much. We actually had no model of the entire mechanical system. And so what we did is you could scream at them, and I felt like it. It's like, what the? Yeah. But what we did is we basically said, it happened, let's move forward. So how do we know what's there? And within 48 hours, we had kind of set everybody together, done a mechanic model, and we had basically 6 areas where damage could have happened. Now, I want to tell you, one of those areas is the cryocooler. If that was broken, it was highly sensitive, we're not launching. we're shipping the telescope back from French Guiana, where that mistake happened, back to the US. The cost is another $1 billion or more. And so basically, going after that, right, immediately accepting and kind of looking at it. So we learned that's like, hey, out of those 6, we were down to 2 within 48 hours. One of them horrific, and the other one terrible, but we can handle. And so basically, I remember waiting in some airport because we needed to turn on the cryo cooler to make sure it still worked. When finally I got the text, it turned on, which basically meant we can go. But for me, once it happens, accept it the way it is and move forward. Like, shit happens. Accept it the way it is and move forward. And so for me, do not waste time. You can fight later, but not in that moment. The team needs you to see that you're moving forward. And you basically are productive as you can immediately, kind of in a way that creates that momentum that, of course, at the end will create victory. So the final one is a trick I used, and I learned that from, again, not by myself. Most of what I said so far is from Stoics. By the way, pretty much every one of those. So I just stole it from people who lived thousands of years ago. And that's where much of the wisdom is, by the way. So for me, the final one is a trick. When you worry, when you have anxieties in the room, here's the trick I used to do often. So basically the whole team sits in the room, and you basically say, so everybody pen down, let's play a game. Suppose we go 1 year in the future, after this launch, after this deployment, and it did not work. Something went horribly wrong. What's the reason for that? So it's an exercise. We hope it doesn't work. And I want to know from everybody what the reason is for why it didn't work 1 year from now. And you cannot believe how that activity helps. What that activity does, it creates transparency. So first of all, you make everybody will speak in that activity. By the way, in my room, everybody speaks. I mean, there's everybody speaks in a room, because I want to get the power of the whole team. I don't want 3-4 extroverts like myself to speak 90% of the time. There's absolutely no reason why extroverts are smarter. Usually there's zero correlation of leadership, of extroversion and introversion and so forth. So I want everybody to speak. So in this activity, what we're doing is we're collecting these stories of what went wrong. And then we go back, remember, to my second topic, what can we do something about? What can we not? And we go over the books one more time. Many times we found good ideas in that activity. So it's kind of, I call it time travel, leadership time travel. Go in the future, something horrible happened. What's the reason? Because in your mind, you have a worry. You want to hear about these worries on the table and make them actionable today. Again, as I said, all that matters is today, because today I can change the future. And so it's the matter in this particular Monday and this particular week. We can change our future, our destiny. So with that, I would like to stop and see whether you want to have a discussion about. Do we have one microphone, by the way, or two? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Thomas. It struck home for me with this walker, because I don't like the idea that I have to use a walker. And I've had to have radical acceptance that in the future, if I fall and bang my head, I'm not going to be much use. So face this, that I've got to use it. It's for safety. I probably can get around without it. So that, I think that's an example. Do you have an example of this kind of in your personal life of where you've had to deal with fear and how you might have done that?
Yeah, so for me, the kind of probably the hardest things that happened to me is when I was kicked out of my family for religious reasons, right? Because I went and became from a person who was in a church, in a family, to a person who was alone. Now, I'm telling you that because it's like, oh, that you never wish that on anyone. When I stood in front of that rocket in French Guiana and the record went, I knew that it was not going to be as bad than that day that I already survived. So for me, that kind of energy, and so I'm deliberately talking about negative things here, right? Kind of, because what I want to show is that negative things can really be fuel for positive action. Because I knew that event is not going to be as bad as what I already went through, and I made that too. And so for me, the personal experience was really empowering for the professional ones.
Did you ever reconnect with your family?
Yeah, just before my father passed away, he called me up and said, I want to talk to you. And I walked off a plane that was going to go to California. I went the other way to Switzerland. And it was a wonderful time 2 days before he passed away. I just only wish it happened before.
That's really amazing. How long ago was that?
A few years ago.
A few years ago. So Thomas, again with this exercise, I'm sure with the launch of James Webb, you went through this. But now that you're, how many years, is it 2 years since that launched? 1 year, well, amazing.
2 years since launch.
2 years since launch. So can you tell us what, it's a big question, what are your major insights now 2 years out, what you've learned from that telescope?
Yeah, so first and foremost, you should recognize that there's amazing astronomers in town that do work on it. Almost in every town, there are amazing astronomers that well over 10,000 that now work on this telescope worldwide. And so there's 2 or 3 insights that we already got. So the first one is, remember, what the James Webb Space Telescope is looking back in time. The universe, as we know, is 13.8 billion years old for a variety of reasons. We can talk about that. But kind of a few 100 million after that, out of a universe that's mostly protons and helium, form stars. And of course, I want to remind you that every atom in your body is at least 1 billion years old. And all of them come from different stars. For example, what's on my hand come from neutron stars that merge. We know pretty well because 6 years ago we observed it. And the models said so. Now we're pretty sure it's from there. Titanium, gold, they're all, most of them from there. So the Earth, the question is, how do you get from something that's mostly hydrogen to something that's so heavy? And you need to form the first stars and the first galaxies. So one of the big observations is the first galaxies, there are many of them, way more than we thought, and they're bigger. So it's like, wow, the universe is not struggling with that. Frankly, the first image we took of the telescope already revealed the oldest galaxy we had ever observed. First time, not even trying. And so basically we found that these galaxies are too big. We also found, by the way, in one case of a galaxy that's 13.2 billion years old. So the light has been in the universe coming to us 13.2 billion years at the speed of light. Just if you don't have a headache one day, you want one, think about that. So that galaxy in the center has a black hole. So black holes, kind of when I was in grad school in the 90s, it became accepted that black holes actually existed, were not just a figment of imagination. In the meantime, we've imaged them. It turns out we think about black holes the wrong way. We thought about black holes as the final product of a galaxy. We now are really worrying that we got the chicken and the egg wrong, that there's a lot more black holes around, perhaps even primordial black holes, that are happening way, way earlier. So galaxies, there are too many of them, they're too big, they have an easy time forming, and the second one is we may have the black hole story all backwards. Those are the 2 I would like to tell you.
Wow, there's a lot to digest there. Again, the scope, when you talk about, was it how many galaxies, billions, or how many, what scope would you guess? How many galaxies have you?
In the universe?
Yeah.
So the way you have to think about it, like just I'll step you through it. Kind of remember till 1900, we only knew about one galaxy, ours, the Milky Way. So if you look at how many stars and then the Milky Way today, by all counts, it's 400 billion stars. So it's a lot more than you think, or than they thought, but it's 400 billion stars. Okay. Now what we know, for each one of those stars, there's something like 5 galaxies in the universe. That's not just one galaxies, but there's close to 2 trillion galaxies. that are out there. So kind of the universe is amazingly much bigger. Each one of them, by the way, is 100 to 400 billion stars. And so kind of the universe is much, much bigger than we ever thought. So if you, I'll give you one number. If you take a corn of sand on your finger and put it anywhere in the sky, and you think, like, what would happen if I took a magnificent telescope like the James Webb and looked at that part? It doesn't matter where you go. Behind that grain of sand are 6,000 to 7,000 galaxies. So just kind of from your eyes to your hand. So kind of the universe is way more magnificent than you ever thought possible.
So this is the obvious question. What's the probability of life on one of these planets?
So I'll give you two answers, right? The first one, as a scientist, I don't know. We have not found life elsewhere. And no, I'm not aware of any room with anything that is from a different planet. So I'm not aware of any of those. I think if you took as many astrophysicists in a room as are in here, or 10 times more, the vast majority of them think it's inevitable that there's life elsewhere. So the likelihood, I would say, of life elsewhere is 100%, just because it's so hard to imagine that everything is so similar to us. Remember, kind of the first extra solar planets were discovered and announced in 1995. So kind of we had ideas there could be other planets. There's many more planets than we ever thought, by a factor of 5 to 10 than the model saw. So kind of a lot of things are just kind of making life. I don't know what the probability was of life elsewhere in the 90s, but what I can tell you is the probability of life since the 90s have increased by a factor of 100 to 200 based on just the observations we made. So I would say it's 100% likelihood, but that's just me as Thomas.
And it's rare to find a scientist that goes to 100%. The other question I have is, there's been many, many insights about the universe from the James. But how is this, what have you learned personally from this? Has anything changed about how you think about your life and about the life on Earth?
I think the first thing that happened is I'm a lot more hopeful than I was before I did James Webb. Just about life, because it seemed impossible. I'll be very frank. Kind of in 2016, I thought the likelihood that we're going to do this telescope and it will work is very much less than 50%. And it seemed, I thought, well, let's try, because we should never not try. But I thought, kind of deep in my heart. By the way, when it was launched, the journalists, kind of in the space journalists, did a poll amongst themselves. The vast majority of them thought, even when we launched, the likelihood was less than 50% that it would work, because of that horrendous deployment with the 344 single-point failures. So I'm tremendously more hopeful. I think the other thing, from the perspective of the galaxies of the universe, there's two ways you can react to kind of realizing that the universe is so big. The first one is to say I'm insignificant, and I don't feel that way. Like a fish in a massive ocean, I feel I'm part of something magnificent, something big. And if I had the choice to live in a glass box where I know every tree and every bush and everything, or in the ocean, even though there's sharks there and it's way more dangerous, I want to be in the ocean, because I'm part of something much, much bigger. So for me, that's what I learned. The energy that comes from that is tremendous, because there's amazing opportunities that come from that thought, from that magnificent kind of size and size of opportunities.
Well, thank you. That's a fascinating perspective. Well, I have to tell you, just personally, very quickly, something I've learned from your work. Sleep problems. Sometimes I have them. A lot of my clients have them. So I have developed this, based on the James Webb, this kind of meditation where I'm thinking, well, which way is the Earth turning? And I'm on the Earth spinning in that direction. Which way are then the next level are going around the sun? So I imagine going around the sun. Then that is moving also in the Milky Way. So usually I'm asleep by that point, but I haven't made it into the black hole yet, but sometimes I think about that. So thank you for that. So what is the next level after is everything always moving? And we think about space as kind of stable, but what about the movement?
Well, so sorry to dispel that. Space is not stable. So see, the universe, the way you should imagine the expansion of the universe is not kind of an explosion into space. Like, if I put one of those, party favors that all the stuff flows out, it's not like that. Space and time are created as it's expanding. So it's not expanding into space. Space is creating as we're going out. So think of it more, kind of the two-dimensional version is like a balloon you inflate, and you look at dots on the balloon that you put on top. So the reason the dots move away from each other is the balloon is expanding. So space is expanding. That's why the galaxies are expanding. So everything is, there is nothing. The laws of the universe is change, not stability. I want to illustrate that. Suppose you were a dinosaur, kind of early stage dinosaur 300 million years ago, and you had a telescope.
In the audience.
300 million years. So you had a telescope, so you looked out. The Pleiades, they don't exist yet. They're younger than 300 million years. The rings of Saturn? No rings of Saturn. The rings of Saturn are younger than 300 million years. So kind of just imagine the laws of the universe is change. It's not stability. Change is the law of the universe.
That's fascinating too. But again, we're going to turn it back to the dinosaurs out here. And by the way, an insight that I got, sometimes when I wake up now at my age, I'm feeling a little achy and tired. Now that I know how old my atoms are on my finger, I can understand that. I better take better care of them too. So, and what's this song about? We are stardust. What was that? The Jefferson Airplane. Anybody know what that song is? You know that one? Yeah. Is it Jefferson Airplane? I'm trying to remember. We are stardust. We are golden. Yeah. I think it's maybe Crosby, Stills and Nash. It might be that. But anyway, we're going to turn it back to you for a minute. And Thomas talked about everybody participating, and we can't do that with a crowd of 70 people here, but we want to create for about 5 minutes trios, and we want you to come up with a question for Thomas. We're not going to be able to hear all those, but we want you to discuss what you've learned either about the fear or about space or about the combination of those things, or anything personal about Thomas in terms of leadership. So discuss that in threes, and if you can, try to talk to somebody you don't know, so that these three guys up here all know each other. So I want you to spread out a little bit and meet some people, because this is LeadersConnect. It's a community. We're in the ocean. We want to meet new fish. So create that. We'll get 5 minutes to do that. I always love this part. It goes from quiet to a wonderful cacophony of noise.
I hope that was okay.
Oh, it was fabulous. I mean, we could probably go on for a week. The Stoics, are you familiar with cognitive behavior therapy?
Not in a specific personal fashion. Of course, I read about it, but
that is drawn from the Stoics. And I learned about that. I was with a therapist who invented it in 1968. And it's very much the same. We use some of the same principles to give people homework assignments. So it's fascinating.
for me, those were so liberating, because at the beginning, I couldn't sleep. And so, how do you handle that?
What did you read?
Well, so I read a bunch of things, some of the Seneca. But then there's Holiday, a lot of kind of new writers.
Holiday, I don't know.
There's people kind of at that war college that talk about stuff. There's a woman. I mean, I can send you some stuff, but I'm sure you know all of it.
If you want to join one of the groups, you should be feel welcome to hear what they have to say. Or
Let me grab some coffee.
So what are you afraid of these days?
So the biggest worry I have is that I just haven't found my thing yet. Yeah. So I set up for data.
So you worry about that? Your collar's up, by the way, on your coat. I worry about that you look right. Your wife's not here to take care of you. So you fear that you won't find it or that you'll make the wrong decision?
Probably more than the first one. The question is, can I find something that excites me as much as this one did, or not?
It's pretty hard to imagine.
I'm curious to know, like, what is Disney's take on it?
You did something that was completely unique. It was not. There was nothing like it before. I mean, you can't compare it. So being president of a university is like you're taking,
So I need to do something else, right? I cannot do it in science.
No.
So already worked with CERN. So already spent like weeks with them, helping them. CERN is 1 million.
What is that?
CERN, the particle accelerator.
Okay. What is that?
Geneva. Continue or?
All right, we're ready for a question. I got to stop this cacophony of wonderful symphony. Who has a question for the group? Right here. Come on up. And will you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Dan Parker, and I am always been so excited about the space program. And I feel somewhat bad the fact that the younger generation just doesn't seem to have the passion that I had, especially when we were right from the Mercury program on up. And I just feel like what happened with Webb is just an amazing feat. My question is there a period of time? How long will a telescope actually continue to function and get relevant information back to your program? Is there an estimate of that?
Yes, there is. So there, when we built the telescope, we had the design life was 10 years. And that was mostly defined by the fuel that we needed to keep the telescope in orbit. So it's at L2, so it's a million miles away from the sun backwards, right? Kind of the dark side, so to say. Another way of saying it is like at midnight, think of where the sun was at noon that day. That's where the telescope is roughly. So a million miles in that direction. So it.
Give us a perspective, like how far this planet?
Well, so the sun is 100 times farther, right? And then 200,000 times farther to the next star. Anyway, so than the sun is of the telescope. Anyway, but we had 10 years of fuel life, and what happened to Europeans? Not only did they successfully inject the telescope, they did it so accurately that the fuel is actually twice as much. So we needed no fuel to get to that orbit because they did it so accurately. First they screwed up the clamp band, but they exceeded the performance so much that frankly we have 20 years lifetime. So that's no longer the dominant lifetime. So there's like 2 or 3 things that are the lifetime. The first one is how much debris hits us out of space, and it's not human-made. It's all from nature, right? There's a lot of dust, so the space is full of gases, but it's also full of dust. And almost every month, the telescope gets hit by a particle. And basically, it's actually more, the heavy particles happen too early. So we changed the whole, NASA changed the whole operation, so we move with the butt into the streams of particles. So our hope is that can also go 20 years, but probably what will stop first are either the instruments. We know that some of the instruments are aging faster than they should, or the cryocooler, the ones I talk about, which is really cooling down the kind of instrument so we can actually see the really cold radiation. So if you add all of that stuff up, it will be 10 years for sure. My hope is we get as close to 20 years as we can. And what I did, the first thing I did when I came to NASA, I added targets and a ring so we can refuel it if fuel is the problem, because I felt like that is ridiculous that I'm betting on future technology. In the meantime, it's not so fascinating anymore. It's not fantasy anymore, because we're already doing that in geostationary orbit. We're refueling. There was a big game like 2 years ago where during a soccer game in Europe, the spacecraft was refueled, the geostationary satellite. Nobody even noticed on Earth that happened up there. So it never actually shook the satellite out of Earth. Anyway, so that's what we're going to use, that technology to refuel, if fuel is in fact the limiting factor.
Another question. Come in the back, come on up.
Is somebody here?
Introduce yourself.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, I'm Sadia. Hello. First, I want to say thank you for rescuing Matt Damon from Mars. That was a big win for us. Thank you for getting that. Second, as a member of the younger generation, I would like to say it's fascinating to follow the web Facebook page. So if you don't know, it's out there and they send pictures every day. It's amazing. I literally look at it every day, so thank you. Our team had so many questions, but I'm distilling it into what would you say are the keys to your success personally and being in a place where you can allow everyone to have a voice in a place like NASA that's not really known for that?
Thank you. Well, so basically what happens if you're an immigrant, which what I was all my life. Even when I went from my little town to Bern, I felt like an immigrant. I felt like I did not belong, because by the way, Bern is half an hour by car from where I grew up. I was there 5 times before I went to school there, because we never went anywhere as a family, right? So I felt as an immigrant. So basically, what that allowed me is kind of a view from the outside that actually was really useful. And by the way, everybody can be an immigrant. You just have to take yourself out of your comfort zone. The passport color is not what makes you an immigrant. It's just kind of go to another world and learn about it, and then you look at your own world that way. But the 2 things that really helped me for my success is the recognition that I'm stronger in a team than alone. And for me, so it's not some kind of political statement or kind of like, oh, people love to hear that. No, I'm better in a team. I mean, my weaknesses that I also bring with me, like I'm horribly impatient. I'm, I'm almost too fearless. I go into the wall more often than I need to. And a good team helps balance that. So I just better in that team. So I learned that. And I think the third thing is that success is not the benefit of one person. It really is a group of people that do that, including my mentors. So for me, the mentors that were there, the team members, and the recognition that if I listen to them, I'll just do better. And frankly, they take some of my fear out of my life that otherwise drives me. So for me, those are the 2, besides being an immigrant, which was the third leg on the stool that I would say helped me a lot. The rest is just learning, and day by day, just trying to learn every day something that you take with you. Like I rarely run still without a podcast. By the way, silence is also beautiful, so I'm actually not trying to advocate against that, but I just love learning about other people's lessons. So for me,
Podcast you listen to?
a number of them.
What's your favorites that you listen to?
Probably Shane Parrish, Farnham Street is one that I listen. Shane Parrish, Farnham Street is one that I listen to. But there's many others. Tim Ferriss, and a lot of other podcasts that I just really benefit from, including the Leadership Academy. I listen to people's stories. I mean, I want to learn about them. So it's sometimes it's also just something beautiful like poetry, right? So for me, it's a bit learn something, challenge yourself.
Another question, yes. This lady is a designer.
We know, yeah. Noel Matawi Tile Works. Thomas, we're curious as to what's been going on since NASA. What are you up to now?
So I'm in a scary part of my life, and kind of I notice that happens like when I'm in a search time. And so basically what I started is I went full speed end of December. 1st of January, I dropped my phone and my NASA badge into a box, and I was done. And I basically was at work full time. And so what I did is, because I knew, by the way, I knew from a lot of my friends that you get kind of a PTSD type of situation. So I told my friends in Utah, be careful, many people have that. And I just want you to know, I don't know whether I will. And I just love them so much. Like one of them, like I barely knew him before. He's a close friend now. He called me every day. If he didn't see me, he called me. He's like, how are you doing, Thomas? What he told me later is that one of his sons had depression. So he immediately understood what I was saying, even more than me. And I really needed him for that. So what I noticed after so many months of search, right, I'm really trying to figure out what the next game is I want to play, right? Kind of like, it's not science probably, or kind of, because the science job I had, there's no second one like that. And so, you know, like the CFE, the Center for Entrepreneurship, is actually just as important to me as the science is, right? Kind of, because I see these hundreds, if not thousands of individuals that are walking around building companies, revolutionizing space. For example, many of, like, you cannot believe how many people are at high levels in these companies. So I'm looking for something like that. For the time, what I'm doing to learn is I'm hanging out with a university in Switzerland, just because I think a lot of the problems truly are international, and I really have not learned to work in Europe. I left 2 weeks after my PhD, so the highest degree I ever had in Europe is a PhD student. So I'm learning how to do that while I do some consulting and give some talks and kind of look at kind of a pipeline of ideas. And eventually something will catch my eye. At least that's what I'm hoping. He said, what are you scared of? It's like, well, I'm scared. I don't see that. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just going through that process. I know I need that. The way I got to NASA, and he already told you, is with the same thing. I was, after the CFE, I was so fulfilled with that, but I knew I'm no longer the best person. And so I needed to do a time of search, and the NASA thing came along kind of unexpectedly. So I'm waiting for something to come around the corner.
I can assure you that something will, because there's, what do you say, how many billions of galaxies? Some of those atoms are going to drop on you, and man, you're going to have an insight. So there's so many things I'd like to talk to you about. We're going to have to wrap up in a few minutes. One thing I want to say as an announcement is Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, we're going to gather here for drinks and, just sit around at the bar, or come in here and to kind of celebrate Thomas, and also celebrate the end of the year, a little bit of a Christmas party for LeadersConnect. So we'll be sending out an announcement of this. This is news to Megan. She's going, oh my God, another thing you're coming. Is that what you're thinking, right, Megan? Okay. I also want to announce one of our sponsors, Office Evolution. Where's David out there? David, tell us, you're inviting us to something too, so.
Well, Friday we're having a Office Evolution open house holiday thing, 4 to 7. It's open to everybody if you're present. I'm Bob.
Tell them where it is.
Well, we call it 455 Club, but it's 455 Eisenhower. So it's right over between Venezuela and Olive Garden, across from Briarwood.
Hey, you park in the back near the pizza place, right?
Yeah, we'll have plenty.
You get a slice and you come on up. So, Thomas, I want to ask you one more question. This is I think when you were at NASA, you and I are friends, but we're not like close friends. I mean, I appreciate you. I know you appreciate me. But in the middle of the NASA thing, one night I get a text, and it says Thomas Zurbuchen here. just so you introduce yourself. Because some of the number comes up, but I may not know who it is. And you just asked, how are things going, checking in. And I thought, my God, how did you find time to do that? And I'm sure I'm not the only person you did that to. So tell me about why you did it and how you do it.
So sometimes, when I'm in a specific place, like after a goal, or, in this case, a time I had time to think, because I was out of emergencies. I just think of who the people are that caused that success, with me. So I go back and thank them, and just check on them. And I just really believe that human relationships are the things that really are what makes life beautiful, what makes life successful. So I go back and do that. And I have checked with you again 2 or 3 times since then, but also with others, because I really.
How many crowds did you do that?
Hard to say. I never I never count, but it's a couple hundred probably, that I check out. Yesterday I was in touch with a friend who currently is in Israel, and he's a tremendous supporter of mine, and I've just been so worried about the experiences he has right now, and so I've chatted with him this morning, right? So for me, now that I have time, I try to do 1 per day, just catch up with somebody, and often I get an impulse, because they, so often they tell me what they're about, or sometimes they're in a time of need. So that's what I do.
You mentioned Israel. We all are. I listen to the Ezra Klein podcast, which I find very interesting, and he's had experts on who are Palestinian and Israeli, and the whole theme is there any solution? So, given your abilities to bring people together, and do you have any ideas about what could happen? That's a big question, but not as big as the universe. I mean, really, you think about it, it's a big question, but what you're dealing with that's a small thing. It's a piece of sand. So, any ideas? And you could say I pass on that, because a lot of people do.
Well, I'm not cognizant of all the variables there, but just what I want to tell you is that there is hope, and hope is not based on data. I don't believe in that. There is always hope. It's a decision that we make, whether we want to be hopeful. And hope is we commit to every day. And my hope is that good people on both sides of this conflict will come together with that attitude and find ways out. There are ways out. We just need to go find them. And if I figured out a tool that I have that can help there, I would use it. I don't know that I have one, other than being a supporter, and I have friends on both sides of the conflict too. So other than just really telling them how horrendous, how our empathy, our feelings are with them, and we need to be on the other side of this. This is not good. War is not the answer to any of those questions.
Well, I go from that to a little smaller question. We're going to have a gathering here on Tuesday. Are you a beer or a cocktail guy, Ed?
Beer.
Is there any kind of beer that you hope we have here? Any beer, okay. So we're going to have some Pabst Blue Ribbon for you here. Or Stroh. I'm a Detroiter, so we'll get some local beer for you before the. Anyway, I'm going on. Let's give Thomas a wonderful hand. I'm going to do, I was at a concert last night. Give him a hand so that he has to do an encore. Come on, keep it going. Keep it going. Hey. He comes back on stage. His wife is the performer, but we'll try it.
No, look, I really appreciate all you do here in the town that is my home, that I love so much, to make this place beautiful and make this place connected. So thanks for coming out today, all of you, and being part of this community. Really appreciate it. So I'll use my encore on one question.
There's food there. You don't take the food, but now you eat some now or take it back to your office or home, because otherwise it's going to go throw it away. So
Nice. That's.
for ourselves, the delicious Zurbuchen food, I want to thank Zurbuchen. It was another.
Yep. Thanks, Thomas. With all your great accomplishments and managing everything through the web and constantly having to identify problems, how did you ground yourself, after all of that? Like you said, people reached out talking about PTSD. And have you been able to do that considering the telescope's still out there and it constantly goes? Were you able to define that moment and give yourself relief? This is success, celebrate it, and I don't know, de-stress?
It's actually a good question. I really struggle with that. So the worst for me was leaving NASA, and the barrage of stuff did not come my way. Because, for me, I'm good when I'm kind of yellow on the stress level. I'm actually better than when I'm green. Because I'm way better at focus when I'm kind of slightly over. And so for me, frankly, I'm spending a lot of time on that very question right now. But how do I ground myself? It's like what we already said. I talk to other people. I talk to my family, and what I do is I go work out. I run, kind of part of my own health is part of that grounding too. But kind of living without stress is really hard for me. So I'm making it myself. At least that's what my wife says.
Again, thank you. And I again, a lot of these ideas I find that I was able to capture from you and others in my book. So I would encourage you to read this book, Men and Healthy Aging. And I would appreciate you listening to a lot of Stoics in there. Have you ever been part of behavioral cognitive therapy? If you see a psychologist or a therapist, check that out, because that's based on the Stoics. Cognitive, you'll find therapists in town. I do this, other people do. So again, get food, come back tomorrow night and enjoy some beer. And we'll have the Pabst, and we'll have also a few others. And we'll see you then.